Play YouTube channel. Welcome to the Foul Play YouTube channel.
Why, thank you very much there, Mr. Ken. It's good to hear your voice again. And welcome, everyone. It's great to be back. Last week we had a bit of a break. I think it was Thanksgiving in the US, and I'm sure people overindulged in turkey and other good things. And it was actually good to have a bit of a break, but thank God we're not addicted to this case or anything like that. So it's great to be here. And thank you very much, guys, for your support. As you know, guys, we do a weekly podcast entitled Reading with Uncle Ken. And we're actually on part 39 at the moment, and which is truly amazing when you think about it. I was just joking to our other fellow panel members. I reckon that we know the book actually better than Ken Kratz, who actually wrote the book. And it's been a real blast, really getting an insight into Ken Kratz's mind and his way of thinking. And there's no doubt there's a huge amount of embedded confessions within the chapters of his book. Well, look, guys, today we're going to be commencing a brand new chapter, chapter 14, entitled The Aftermath. And I'm Dr. Silkman, and I'm from the Foul Play team. Now, remember, guys, right at the start, when we started this adventure, Ken Kratz wrote a book called Avery, The Case Against Stephen Avery and What Making a Murderer Gets Wrong. So this book, in effect, was a response to Making a Murderer Season 1. So what would have happened, Ken Kratz wrote 2 versions or editions of this book, and the aftermath would have literally have been the final chapter of his book in his first edition. Now, we know that subsequently to Ken releasing his book, Making a Murderer Season 2 came out, which meant that Mr. Kratz had to write additional chapters to his book. And don't worry, we'll be covering those as well. So look, guys, welcome. It's great to be here. If you like what we do, please subscribe to our channel. It's fantastic that our subscriber numbers have come up, which is awesome. And if you like what we do, please leave your DNA on the thumbs up button. It's fantastic to be here. Well, look, guys, as we traditionally do, what I want to do is to introduce the panel, tell us who you are and what time it is in your part of the world. We have Checking Convictions.
It's 3:04 in Minnesota at 33 degrees. Hi, everybody.
Hey, we have Inexplicable Susan.
Hi, everyone. It is 3:04 in Missouri Kansas, and it's 63 degrees.
We have, thank you, we have Just Rhonda.
Hi, everyone. It is now 2:05 in Utah, United States, and it is an abnormally warm 52 degrees.
Wow. Thank you, Just Rhonda. We have Neverly. Neverly,
hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. It is 1:08 p.m. in foggy and cold California, around 52 degrees. But who's complaining? I busted out my winter socks out.
Sheep.
Yeah,
so
I know.
It's not 5:30 in the morning anymore.
No. No. That's the thing of the past.
Thank you very much, Neverly.
Very
and
pleasant.
finally, thank you. And finally, we have Zoe.
Hi everyone, it's 10:06 p.m. here in Slovenia and we have 35.6 degrees Fahrenheit.
Gee, fantastic. Thank you very much, Zoe. and my name is Dr. Silkman, and I'm from Adelaide, South Australia, on a beautiful sunny morning, and it's around about 18 degrees Celsius, a beautiful sunny day. So as you can see, guys, we are truly an international team from all over the world, and welcome, guys. It's great to be here. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to start the podcast proper. And before we do that, guys, our thoughts and prayers with J-Jax. We hope that he feels a little bit better. Normally he's on our panel, but he's been a little bit under the weather. And we also send our regards and condolences to Alice. She's normally on our panel, and we're thinking of her and everyone who's associated with Foul Play and our supporters, and hopefully we will catch up soon in the future. And just before we start the podcast proper, just to let you know, guys, that we do have a very extensive library on our website that contains many documents that a lot of hardworking individuals have FOIA'd, and we've discussed those FOIAs in various podcasts that we do on Foul Play. And I'm sure everyone is appreciative of the hard work and effort that goes into obtaining the FOIAs, as well as the hard work that's being done to analyze the FOIAs as well. And we're very blessed to have such hardworking people as part of Foul Play. And we're also very fortunate that we have loyal supporters like you guys. All right. So what we'll do, today's podcast will be slightly shorter. I promise it'll be slightly shorter, hopefully just over an hour. So we'll make a start. And please, guys, if you have any questions, please place them in chat. And certain members will monitor the chat, and we'll try and answer your questions during the podcast. All right, guys. Well, look, welcome, and we'll make a start. So this is reading from chapter 14, entitled The Aftermath. I quote, "I won't tell you where in Wisconsin I live now. I've escaped the tortures and pitchforks that descended upon me in Superior, the small port city where I lived when Making a Murderer was released. I'm semi-retired. I declared bankruptcy in 2012 and draw a state pension from 25 years in the prosecution business. I play guitar and am hoping to get a band back together. My girlfriend and I head out for a typical Midwestern fish fry most Friday nights and stroll through the farmers market on Saturday mornings. Life is slow, but intentionally so these days. I subscribe to Netflix." All right, so, oh boy, I don't know. So the question to the panel is this: who believes that Mr. Kratz is fortunate to not be sitting in a prison cell and his pension going to his victims? Who would like checking convictions?
Yeah, he better be real thankful for that. And what was that about Netflix, he said?
He actually subscribes to Netflix.
Oh, well, I mean, aren't we the weirdos that, got our education off of Netflix? Isn't that what we've heard before from him? That guy
That's
is
correct.
he's a double talker. And he should be very thankful that his pension is not going to victims, because that's really what should have happened.
Yep, I agree 100%. But I love the little taunt that he gives right at the end. I subscribe to Netflix. And for our listeners of our podcast series, he's been very damning of Netflix and also the producers of Making a Murderer. And he gives that little dig at the end by saying, I subscribe to Netflix. Inexplicable Susan, do you have a comment?
I think it's also like he's sticking out his tongue at us because he's still getting his pension.
Oh, that's correct. 100%,
Yeah.
100% agree there.
And I believe it is so wrong. I mean, he left under such disgrace. It's just so wrong that he still gets a pension.
Agree. And I've had a look at some of the comments, and people do mention the word arrogant, and that's 100% correct. And you know, if he is meant to be taken seriously, it's inflammatory words like this, which, you know, it just goes, I think, to show his true character. Susan, do you have a comment?
I agree with you, Doctor.
Yeah, it's really is very disappointing. I mean, remember, Ken Kratz was one of the lead prosecutors in the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey cases. And, you know, he writes this book really as a form of trying to get the record straight, right? And it is rather bizarre that he continuously makes comments like this and now is literally poking his tongue out by saying, you know, I subscribe to Netflix. Well, I mean, it's the show Making a Murder which really exposed the shenanigans of not only the prosecutors but also what happened to Stephen and Brendan, and we are forever thankful for that. Guys, checking convictions. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, well, I agree with a lot of what people are saying in the chat, that he's just taking a piss on Netflix, on everything, on all of what we're doing, and it's like, ha 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 ha, ha. You know, I mean, I'm still here, and ha ha ha, ha. Let's just dig at him. You know, let's just put the knife in and turn. He's really out of control. I think he's just out of control.
Correct. I mean, to me, guys, there's no form of humbleness here. He gives no apologies. In actual fact, if you think about it, he's actually behaving exactly the same as he behaved in court, and he's doing exactly the same thing in his book. There's no retribution here. There's no sorry, you know, for his victims, and he's basically laughing at all of us. He's got his pension. He's retired. He declared bankruptcy. He's got his girlfriend, married now, no doubt. And you think, you know, life is good. Checking convictions.
Yeah, I mean, he should be saying sorry, some kind of formal apology to them people. He just acts like, oh, we'll just shove it under the rug. It doesn't matter. I can get away with anything. I can do whatever I want. And he's really re-victimizing them people by some of the things he says.
100% correct. And I agree with just Rhonda. He is extremely narcissistic. And, you know, you would think that writing a book, you'll be able to, you know, admit your faults, which, you know, to his credit, he did in one of the chapters, and we covered that. But at the same token, he's having a good old laugh, right? And it's, you know, if you're one of his victims, and Lord knows how many victims there are out there that haven't come forward, it really is a bit of an insult, in my opinion. And, you know, it's once you write down things like this in a book, get ready to be criticized for it. You know, it's extremely disgraceful. Guys, does anyone have any additional comments? Just Rhonda, do you have any comments at all about that particular passage?
It's just, you know, I really am enjoying the reading. I really am, but it's just all the same from him. Every single thing that he says, narcissistic, you know, degrading, and so not that I'm bored, but it's just it's a methodology from him, or a conversation from him that's just all kind of rhetorical in a way, his attitude. But
Correct.
and I just got a kick out of him talking about trying to get a band together, and him and his girlfriend. I'm like, oh please, nobody cares.
Correct. Can anyone picture Ken Kratz riding that white horse into the sunset, holding holding his guitar.
I see him on the black horse riding into hell.
Well, that's right. But I think someone made the comment about the fact that he is going straight to hell. And I made the comment that the devil doesn't want competition. So, yeah, what can you do? That's true. But, this is what he's written. And, we have a right, I think, to be critical here. And it is pretty disappointing. And it's very, very interesting how he made the comment that he plays guitar and he wants to get his band back together again. Now, you do realize who played bass in his band, right? Can anyone guess? Who was the bass player in his rock band? Never.
Schimmel. Brad Schimmel.
Yeah, Brad Schimmel. Okay.
Yeah.
Brad Schimmel was his
The
bass
Attorney
player.
General. Yeah.
Yeah, in his band. And we all know the incredible damage that Brad Schimmel did, especially when it came to Brendan Dassey and all of his appeals. I don't know about you guys, but I've never personally seen an Attorney General be so intensely involved in a case. And he followed every conviction or every hearing that went down in regards to Brendan Dassey. And you could tell he was not going to let it go. And it's rather remarkable that Ken Kratz has actually got the gall of, hoping that he can reform his band again, which is truly remarkable. I think does anyone remember what his band was actually called?
Alibi.
Alibi.
Yeah.
Alibi, which is rather remarkable because didn't Mr. Kratz actually provide an alibi for Ryan Hilligus? Does anyone remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
Yes.
it's truly remarkable when you think about it. So, yeah, that's how we opened up his chapter, The Aftermath. Susan, do you have any comments?
He also provided an alibi for himself for Teresa's murder, as I recall, on one of the interviews.
That's correct. I believe he was interviewed by a comedian, a lady.
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think she asked him, well, where were you, Mr. Kratz? And he says, well, at least I had an alibi. And it's rather remarkable that, let's think about it. A person has been brutally murdered here. And you can't make a joke or some type of a crass remark like that. He's a prosecuting attorney, but it sort of makes you ask deeper questions, doesn't it? That someone like Mr. Kratz has to provide an alibi. Just simply crazy. All right, guys, do we have any additional comments? Checking convictions.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it just shows his true moral compass that has been missing since probably the day he was born.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree. It's been very hard for him to change. It's quite clear that he went through a lot of personal hell and trauma, went to all these different places in order to get better. But I think from reading the words on his book, I don't think he really has. Inexplicable Susan, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to say our supermod, Catnip, put a link to that interview with Jenna Friedman. It was the comedian.
Yes, correct. Yes, yeah. If you guys have some spare time, just check it out. And thank you, Catnip, for putting that up. Yeah, she is indeed a supermod. That's for sure.
I've always been fascinated by her when she asked him if he murdered Teresa. He blushes, which always fascinated me.
Correct, 100% correct. And, it still does my head in because when you think about it, both Norm Garn and Tom Fallon, they've kept pretty quiet and remained behind the scenes, whereas Ken Kratz is the spokesperson for the so-called Dream Team that prosecuted both Stephen and Brendan. And Ken Kratz cannot help himself. As I've said many times, guys, he's like a a moth to a flame. He just cannot help himself. All right, guys. Are there any additional comments from the first passage? We're all good? And how we're doing in the chat? We got any questions so far, or we can proceed? I just
Go ahead,
wonder.
we're fine.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, we look pretty good. Just people making, appropriate comments about Ken Kratz.
Good, good. All right, guys. Well, let's get on with our second passage. Right. I quote, all told, I received more than 4,000 death threats and hate-filled messages, some brutally specific, after making a murderer debuted. Now, what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to actually read some of the comments. Now, I'm going to read some of the less vitriolic comments. Now, Ken Kratz gives about 4 or 5 different examples, and some of them are brutal. I'm not going to read those out. I'm going to read some of the less brutal ones and get the panel to comment on what they think about these comments. Here's the first comment. I quote, I watched the Netflix show. You were a total disgrace. You should be disbarred and imprisoned for a lot longer than Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey's combined sentences. Your obsession with winning the case with no regard for the truth left a real killer out there. Nice going. Here's comment number 2. Have you ever done a single kind or charitable thing in your entire worthless life? You really are one of the lowest and most disgusting creatures that has ever crawled the earth. The final comment. Like, there are some comments I simply cannot read out. They're very, very bad. Here's the final comment. You wrongfully convicted an innocent man. You knew this, and that makes you guilty in a court of the public. You should be held accountable. I wish they still hung people or stoned them to death just for you. So remember, Ken Kratz said he got 4,000 death threats. I think he's probably underplaying that. It was probably more than double that. Here's the question to the panel. Why were individuals making comments like these to Mr. Kratz? And do you believe they were all genuine? Checking convictions.
Well, the internet can be a not so nice place. People feel, 10 feet tall and King Kong behind a keyboard. Although, as much as I don't like Ken Kratz, I don't think anybody should go real life threatening anybody. But, the part about going to jail and being accountable for it, 100%. I'm sure these people were as outraged as I was when I watched that and seen his behavior. The press conference enough. I mean, that right there just blew my mind that anybody would go and do that. So yeah, I think probably a lot of them meant it, even though they didn't go through with it. But at the time, they were probably so outraged that yeah, that's how they felt.
Correct. 100% correct. I agree. Thank you, Checking Convictions. Neville, do you have a comment?
Yes, Dr. Silkman. I don't know if Ken Kratz is being genuine over here, or is he trying to solicit some kind of a pity for him enduring all these death threats and just the nasty comments, and which I think the comments are genuine, unless he wrote them himself, just to prove the point. Or is he this oblivious to the fact or what he's done? Because this whole book, he keeps justifying his behavior, his actions, and his decisions and belief, pretty much to me, at least. And it seems like I'm not the only one.
Correct.
Obviously.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because I don't know, he must either convince himself that he's done nothing wrong in order to even think to write a book, or was he really that bored? I don't know. because narcissists, when they're bored, they're dangerous. Actually, they go into all kinds of trouble because they're seeking for that thrill, for that
Correct.
action.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So
Correct.
yeah, and then people feel how they feel, and more power to them for expressing them. I don't know if they're all that bad, or did he embellish a little bit, as I said, just to prove the point.
Yeah, it's. I know. I know that the MTSO. If you go to there's a website, stephenavery.org, that basically has a folder with all the with several emails that people have written to various members of the MTSO, and some of them are pretty vile and disgusting. There's no doubt. And I agree with what you said, Neverly. There's no doubt that there's been a massive backlash against the MTSO and particularly against Mr. Kratz. And people felt very, very strong. Now let's be real here, right? Let's play devil's advocate. We're potentially talking about Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey as being rapists and murderers, right? I'm playing devil advocate here. I believe in their total innocence, but I'm playing devil advocate here. So if that's the case, if Brendan Dassey and Stephen Avery were potential rapists and murderers of a 25-year-old photographer named Teresa Halbach, why on earth are people so vitriolic against Mr. Kratz, who, as you'll see, he did his job as a prosecutor? So my question is, why are individuals from all over the world so incensed and giving comments like this to Mr. Kratz? Who would like to make a comment? Susan.
Well, number one, the press conference that he held, even if they were guilty, he took away their presumption of innocence with that press conference.
Very good point.
He also withheld exculpatory evidence, which is unethical, once again, as a prosecutor.
Correct. Correct.
And I believe it was his idea to coerce Brendan into a confession.
Correct. In other words, there was a lot of dirty pool going on, right?
Especially dirty pool, yes.
Especially behind the scenes. And this is what personally, I don't know about you guys, but that's the loud message I got from when I saw Making a Murderer, especially season number 1. I could not understand Mr. Kratz's veracity. Same with Norm Garn and Tom Fallon. It just seemed extraordinary here. And of course, guys, we've Foul Play and other YouTubers have done a huge amount of work looking at Stephen Avery and his background, especially what happened to him in 1985. And it is truly remarkable that Ken Kratz in court said, whatever happened to Stephen in 1985 has got nothing to do with this case, which meant that what he tried to do was to trivialize everything that happened to Stephen or his wrongful conviction. And, it clearly must have backfired on him because, like I said, he has received thousands of death threats. And I want to say right up front, guys, it's not good, right? No matter what you think of Mr. Kratz, trying to threaten him, his family, his belongings, his possessions, it's not a good thing. We can't be seen as internet vigilantes, right? Because it's not going to work. The only way someone like Ken Kratz can pay is through the legal system, and we all know how that one worked out. Susan, do you have a comment?
However, the first one that you read, I think, was just spot on.
Correct. You want me to reread that one again?
Yeah, read that again, please.
Okay. So here's one comment that someone wrote to Mr. Kratz. I watched the Netflix show. You are a total disgrace. You should be disbarred and in prison for a lot longer than Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey's combined sentences. Your obsession with winning the case with no regard for the truth left the real killer out there. Nice going. Now, the question I'm going to ask is, did anyone in the panel submit that to Mr. Kratz? Because all jokes aside, that's exactly how I feel. Susan.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I wish I had.
Yeah, it's very poignant. It's to the point, and I believe it's a reflection of what people are feeling. Look, I'm sure everyone on the panel has seen many prosecutors in action, but I don't recall seeing anyone of the bitterness and vindictiveness of Mr. Kratz, and also Tom Fallon when he prosecuted Paul Brendan Dassey. There had to be a reason for their veracity, and I think we all know what that reason is. Just Rhonda, do you have a comment?
I do. I was just going to say, the way they prosecuted and the way they spoke, they did sound like this was very, very personal to them, Kratz and Turtle Lips.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
it seemed more personal to them.
But why do you think that was the case, just Rhonda? Why the personal aspect of it?
As far as Kratz is concerned, I can't really say because he wasn't part of to my knowledge, part of the 85 case stuff. But Fallon, he was, I don't know, I think he was more involved at some point, or not maybe not involved, but have more dealings with it or whatever. I don't know. I just
Correct.
don't. I really don't know why it was so. And maybe Kratz had just had been told things or knew, or I'm sure he researched the 85 case and he knew all about it, and you know um, he was probably pissed off that Stephen got exonerated from the 85 case, and
Correct.
his narcissism doesn't allow anybody, especially the likes of Stephen Avery, to beat the system.
Correct. And you're right. And don't forget, guys, we all, in one of the open mic podcasts, we discussed Tom Fallon as being part of the, involved in the depositions. And he was deposed and he was questioned. And remember, he could not even say, what exculpatory evidence is, right? He danced around it. He could not admit about the injustice that was done to Stephen Avery and the spotlight that was placed on Gregory Allen, right? And he was asked about exculpatory evidence, and he could not admit that the state had potentially exculpatory evidence regarding Gregory Allen. And I think that goes to show the character of Tom Fallon a real lot. And, when you think about it, you've got Ken Kratz, Norm Garn, Tom Fallon as special prosecutors against Brendan Dassey, against Stephen Avery. They had no chance. The veracity and the manner in which they were attacked was just simply off the charts. And I've never seen anything like it. And so reading these responses, and again, I haven't read out the vitriolic ones, one can understand people's frustration. There was a lot of dirty pool here. And it's very interesting that I believe Mr. Kratz continued that in his book, right? He never let up. And that's remarkable when you think about it. All right, guys, does anyone else have any additional comments? All right, we're all good? Fantastic. Okay, now let's get on with question number 3. Okay. I quote, "A few times the social media flogging turned into something else. A couple of Avery supporters came to Wisconsin to harass me in person when a man named Daniel Luke traveled all the way from Oregon in January 2016 to stake out my office and film our confrontation for YouTube. The cops had to threaten an arrest to get him to leave. He later returned to my office parking lot to leave, quote, some DNA on my door handles and film my license plate for the benefit of future vandals. Now, if you haven't seen it, check it out. Go to YouTube, look up Daniel Luke. So this is a real event, right? Daniel Luke bought his camera and tried to corner Ken Kratz to ask him a series of questions, just some questions. Ken Kratz called the police, and that boy, did they show up. And it's very interesting that the subtle threats that they were displaying to Daniel. Now, I want to say straight up front, I don't condone this type of activity where you go and harass and threaten someone, right? But on the same token, you should be available to ask and answer specific questions, right? Well, Ken Kratz called the police on this guy, and he eventually did leave. So my question is this. Why does Mr. Kratz attract such behavior from Avery supporters? Who'd like to have a go with that one? Checking convictions.
I mean, is that really a question? Because
Well, tell us
I'm really not. It's
convictions.
not your question that is like flooring me. It's just really, I mean, there's a long list we could start, and it would probably take up this whole podcast of reasons why he gets the way he gets what he receives. You know what I mean? What he gives out, he's getting it back. Although I don't threaten and I don't think that's cool, but he is a vile person. I mean, he's a narcissist. His end goal was to convict two people that he knew didn't do a thing. So yeah, I guess he deserves it, and he should get probably more, verbal attacks, but not physical, against his life.
Correct. 100% agree. I mean, look, he's become the lightning rod for this particular case. And there's been a lot of vitriol. There's no doubt there's been a lot of vitriol directed towards him. Mr. Kratz blamed everybody. He blamed making a murderer. He blamed Netflix. He blamed you and me, right? But the reality is he needed to blame only one person, and that was himself, right? Himself. He attracted all this negativity and all this attention to himself, right? During the trial, he was the focus of attention, and he said that he didn't court the cameras, but we know that's not true. Every time there was a microphone, he would be more than willing to talk in front of the cameras, in front of the microphones, giving his side of the story as well. And as you know, Mr. Kratz has or had a very strong multimedia presence, YouTube channels. He went on many chat shows, Dr. Phil, he had a lot of exposure, and he believes that he's 100% correct. Now, look, guys, he's had his day in court. Stephen and Brendan are in prison, essentially for life. I can't understand what motivates Mr. Kratz to now try and write a book like this and have all these multimedia presence, a large multimedia presence, where he's essentially taunting people like you and me. And when you think about it, he's also taunting the Avery and Dassey families continuously. He does not let up. Guys, do we have any additional comments?
I'm
checking convictions.
I was just going to say, if he would have simply maybe even been accountable for his actions in the sexting or something like that, where he showed a little bit of remorse for some of his actions, maybe he wouldn't get that. But he's like, trying to rub our face in his dirt.
Correct. He essentially is trying to find someone to blame for his own actions. Inexplicable Susan, do you have a comment?
I think he probably had visions of making tons of money on this book and being back in the spotlight.
Look, I 100% agree. Look, would you guys agree that he has an incredible amount of jealousy for Stephen Avery? Do you guys?
Absolutely.
100%.
Yes.
You guys agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
Because in every situation where he can, he keeps on referring to Stephen Avery as the hero, the superstar, the icon, the celebrity. I really believe that Ken Kratz, Mr. Kratz, was extremely disappointed in that he wasn't given the due recognition for his prosecution of Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey. I believe he expected to go places, to climb the ladder socially, professionally, and it didn't happen. And his career took a massive nosedive. And what's interesting here is that he blamed Netflix and the producers of Making a Murderer, and now he's blaming you and I, and people in chat as well, for his demise. Guys, any comments about that one? Does anyone in the panel feel sorry for Mr. Kratz? A chicken conviction.
No, I don't feel sorry for him. But I just wanted to kind of extend what you said. From the very beginning, he was like, this guy's in the spotlight. I'm going to come and take your thunder. Watch this prize win it all. That's what I really think he believed.
Correct. And as Neville has justifiably stated, because of his narcissistic personality, he cannot help himself, right? So he wanted to essentially dethrone Stephen Avery and, put the spotlight on himself, which is a rather bizarre thing to do when you think about it. It just simply is crazy. So I think Mr. Kratz can't understand, again, why he's attracting so much vitriol, hate, and people actually coming and following him and asking him questions. He cannot simply understand it. Checking convictions.
That's twisted thinking of a narcissist. They really just do not see it. They have a different vision of what reality is. I mean, he honestly, truly believes that he is right on everything.
Correct. Guys, have you ever seen a prosecutor like Mr. Kratz before? Ever encountered anyone like Mr. Kratz before? Checking convictions.
Never, and not to this day.
Okay. Susan.
I don't think that Nasty Disgrace is too far off.
Correct. And don't forget, he actually got Nancy Grace to do the foreword in his book. And what is incredible is that what she wrote was exactly like Ken Kratz. Her thoughts, the way she expressed herself, is a mirror image of Mr. Kratz. Susan.
And I hate to say it, but I think in this country there are a lot of prosecutors that are not so far off sweaty Kratz.
Yeah, that's very scary. In fact, there was a prosecutor, the guy that was working with Dr. West. Remember that prosecutor? The one that would not accept that those African American men were indeed innocent of killing those little girls. Susan.
Yes. Oh, was that the one with the unindicted co-ejaculator?
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. That's correct. Yeah. Both him as a prosecutor and Dr. West were working as a team, a tag team, right? And they were prosecuting as many cases as possible and making a huge amount of money. It's just simply mind-blowing. Just Rhonda, have you ever encountered a prosecutor like Mr. Kratz?
You know, I can't really say that I have, encountered one like him. But I know well, I mean, I don't know that I haven't encountered him, but the history that I know about Bob Macy in Oklahoma, I think Bob Macy, believe it or not, I think he was worse.
Wow.
But yeah, Bob Macy was just a villain. He was just a villain, and he was just blood hungry, like bloodthirsty or whatever they call it, because he wanted to execute people. Just it was like a
Yeah.
goal. It was like his life, like he was born to execute people, have people executed. But
Correct.
but as far as the foulness and the pervertedness and the grossness and greasy feeling I get about from Kratz, no, I don't think there's anybody like him that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Just Rhonda. I must admit, I couldn't believe my ears and eyes when I saw Making a Murderer for the very first time. Like I said, I thought it was a caricature. I thought it was a play, some type of weird court drama that people behaved in such a ridiculous manner. But it was real. It was true. Ken Kratz was being Mr. Kratz. And to this day, I was just completely shocked by his behavior. But again, the more cases that we've done, the more cases that we've been exposed to, unfortunately, we see the same type of activity from many prosecutors, just like Just Rhonda said. Checking convictions.
Yeah, Graham Moss says prosecutor and Kyle Rittenhouse reminds him of KK. I'd have to agree.
Wow, unbelievable. Thank you, checking convictions. Susan.
I just have to say that in this country, we reward prosecutors for winning, how many wins they have.
Oh, that's correct. That's
and
correct.
They win at all costs. So many of them. That's what makes them unethical.
That's correct. And unfortunately, when you have that win at all costs attitude, you cannot accept that you have made a mistake, right? And the mere factor that we're having so many people are being released from prison, from long-term jail sentences, it's scary. It really is scary. This win at all costs. It's like a team fighter, right? The more knockouts you get, the greater is your status, and the more fame that you get. That's what it is. It is a win at all cost mentality. Checking convictions.
Yeah, it's conviction and not truth. I mean, they're supposed to be seeking the truth, and the conviction should be from the truth, but they just look at straight conviction. That's it. Got to convict.
Correct. And just before I get to Just Rhonda, I think one of the most horrific things I've ever heard was from Dr. West. I don't know if you could remember it, but he said, when those African American men were exonerated, and he goes, the system is really good. When there's a mistake, we can always open the door and let them out. And I'm thinking to myself, you put someone in prison potentially for life, and you also put them on death row. Imagine if you make a mistake. There'll be no more opening the door. You've killed someone that has not committed any crime whatsoever. But just the attitude and arrogant behavior of someone like Dr. West and also Mr. Kratz, it's very, very scary. Just Rhonda, do you have a comment?
Kind of going back just a little bit, wasn't it Mark Dassey, Blind Injustice, where he talked about when he was a prosecutor, how that was actually what he learned eventually, was that they were there to get the W, not to get the justice. And that was one of the things, if I recall, that he that really turned him sour towards prosecution.
Correct.
And
Correct.
excellent book. Everybody read it
Correct.
or listen to it.
Yep, 100% correct. There's no doubt it's a win at all costs attitude. Finding the truth is really irrelevant. You got to get the win. You got to get the win. So, yeah, it's rather remarkable that Dassey actually flipped and now was involved in the Innocence Project and getting people out. So he worked on both sides of the fence, and he now understood how difficult it was to actually release people that were wrongfully convicted. And it's a terrible, terrible process that once you're convicted, it's almost impossible to reverse it. And we all know, because both Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey are facing that, as well as many other people around the world, especially in the US. It's not only Stephen and Brendan, it's a terrible process. Now, Neverly, have you ever encountered anyone like Mr. Kratz as a prosecutor?
Not as flamboyant as Kratz is, but there's, as everybody agreed, there's tons of them. I remember the one from Ryan Ferguson case. He lied through his, didn't he? I forget his name, but Zellner totally called him out.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
And I think when Zellner said in Ma'am 2 that it would be her pleasure unmasking Mr. Kratz, that was correct. Really like a huge red flag for him, because narcissists, for what I understand and what I've been reading about they do not like to be unmasked. But when you do that, it's like, brace yourself. Here it comes.
Correct. Correct. Expect retaliation. That's basically
major one. Yes. Yes.
They're not going to go down. They're not going to go down without swinging. That's for sure. Thank you so much, Neverly. Zoe, have you ever encountered a prosecutor like Mr. Kratz?
Oh, luckily, no, I haven't. I hope I never do.
Yes, it's very, very frightening.
Our justice system here in my country is not so scary than the justice system in the United States. So I feel pretty safe here where I live. So we don't have the death penalty. The highest jail sentence here is 30 years. Only 2 people in history of Slovenia have been convicted for 30 years. So, and we really don't have such a high crime rate. We don't have a lot of murders, and if we do have them, it's like, the husband killed his wife and then he killed himself, that kind of things. We don't have serial killers. We don't have. So no, I hope I never encounter a prosecutor like Ken Kratz. It doesn't even need to be a prosecutor. I hope I don't encounter a person like Ken Kratz ever in my life.
Oh yes, yep, 100% agree, Zoe. 100% agree. And how are we doing for time wise? You haven't got your hand on that button yet, Zoe?
Not yet.
Good. Correct. And I don't know about the rest of the panel, but I have definitely encountered narcissists in my time. My former boss was one, and it's remarkable the psychology that they use against you. It's unbelievable. 1 minute you're a superstar, next minute you're a threat. And narcissists are from another planet and are very, very scary, especially if they happen to be in positions of power, like Mr. Kratz was. Checking convictions.
Somebody just DM'd me Catherine Zellner's take on this book, and it said, heard that KK's book on SA ranks 323,000. Not exactly a bestseller. Can't imagine why.
Correct. I think when I did the review years ago on your channel, Checking Convictions, I think it was like the average back then was like about a 1 out of 5 stars. And some of the comments that people wrote were really, really shocking. And I think in time, all his buddies put in positive comments just to try and even up the score a little bit. So that unfortunately happens, that you get fake reviews. You got to be very, very careful, especially if you're on any type of review site. There are many, many fake reviews. And that's why I feel fantastic that Foul Play has really gone into Mr. Kratz's book in great, great detail. And it's just been eye-opening. Susan, do you have a comment?
Yeah, if you recall, Dr. Silkman, it was one of our first podcasts on Reading with Uncle Ken, and we had a bunch of fake reviews in the live chat. I think Ken and his sweetheart were here.
Yes, correct. And it's rather remarkable because the comments that these people make are just so different to everybody else's. You know that something is going on, right? Which is rather, like I said, I do not mind if you're a guilter, if you're a truther, be civil, and we can discuss any aspect of the case, right? But don't flood comments or chat rooms or whatever with just fake material. It's not going to help anyone at all. All right, guys, thank you so much. What we'll probably do one or two more questions because I know we have a bit of a time restraint at the moment. So we'll see what we can do. Okay. Now, here's the next quote. I quote, "I've struggled to let go of my anger, tried to accept that I can't control the opinions and actions of others. My past doesn't define who I am today, and I won't allow armchair experts trained at the Netflix School of Law to define me either. But I won't deny that it's hard to see conspiracy theories embraced over facts. To see what I've always regarded as one of my greatest accomplishments, the successful prosecution of Stephen Avery, characterized as incompetence or prosecutorial misconduct." Right. So here's a question to the panel. Why does Mr. Kratz have a social media presence and keeps posting his opinions about the cases and taunting truthers? Who would like to answer that one? Checking convictions.
I think he's trying to make himself relevant. I mean, he just wants to be there. He wants to push his narrative, no matter what it is. I mean, be it the case or his own, his own personal agenda,
Yep, that's a very, very good point. What you just said there, trying to remain relevant. And did anyone like the fact that he actually called us armchair experts trained at the Netflix School of Law? Anyone want to put that on a T-shirt? Checking convictions.
Well, didn't he just say that he subscribed to Netflix and now he's putting us down? I mean, he is a double-sided. He is the most double-talking person I've ever. I mean, he says one thing and contradicts his own statements. I mean, he's crazy. He is really crazy.
Correct. And look, guys, let's no jokes aside here. We know that Colburn with the Netflix suit. I'm not sure what the outcome of that is at the moment. Does anyone know what's happening with that particular case? Has anyone read up? Checking convictions.
They're still in getting like discoveries and things like that, so it's still in the works as far as I know.
Okay.
They're probably waiting for a report from Colburn. It's going to take a few years, so.
Yes. Correct. Thank you, Zoe. That's the comment of the podcast. Yes, correct. We know that Mr. Colburn doesn't write reports very, very judiciously and quickly. Susan, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think he says it's his greatest achievement ever because of his ridiculous story with planted evidence, even admits the key was planted. So that's his greatest achievement is fooling people.
Oh, that's correct. And when you come to think about it, it is very shameful and disgusting that you had senior people, senior investigators like Fassbender and Uyghur really take advantage of a mentally challenged 16-year-old kid, right? With no legal representation, they completely bamboozled him and convicted him for life in prison for rape, murder, and mutilation of a corpse with no forensic evidence whatsoever, right? And to think that Mr. Kratz would say that that's the greatest achievement of his life. Help me out here, guys. Just Rhonda, do you have a comment?
But wait a second, in his closing arguments, didn't Ken Kratz say that there was one man and one man only responsible for the death? So yeah,
That's
and then he
correct.
goes and then he just prosecutes Brendan Dassey in a
That's correct.
trial for the same thing. He's such a
For the same thing. Yeah.
yeah.
Don't forget, guys. We have one victim and we have two different murder scenarios. Two different murder scenarios. I've never encountered that in my life, right? Because Mr. Kratz, Fallon and Garn cannot keep a story straight, right? They had to invent a story and then stick to it, no matter how ridiculous it was. So one victim, two different murder scenarios, or one for Stephen and one for Brendan. And to think that that's the greatest achievement he's ever done, it's sad. Checking convictions. Do you have a comment?
I was just going to say that's very confusing. What did they do? Kill her twice? I mean, it just makes no sense at all. And
Yes.
if he wants if he wants to be proud of that, well, take that to your grave and see how the devil likes it when you get there, okay? Because that's really
Correct.
something to be embarrassed about.
Correct. And you see, this is the most insidious thing I've ever heard in my life, right? You've got allegedly multiple rape taking place of a woman strapped to a bed, chained to a bed, right? Cut, stabbed, all sorts of horrible, nasty things, right? There's one problem. There is no forensic detection of any bodily fluid, cells, or blood coming from Teresa Horbach, right? So hence, seasoned investigators had to say, well, even if Teresa Horbach was stabbed, had her throat cut, she bled internally. There were no bodily fluids, there was no blood, there were no skin cells. It's almost as though Teresa Horbach was, guess what, guys, was never in that bedroom in the first place. So hence, she wasn't killed in the bedroom because forensically, their crime scene specialist said, guys, nothing happened here. So they had to move the crime scene to the garage, right, where she was shot 10 or 11 times. Brendan Dassey, as you know, said, no, we shot her on the side of the garage. On the side of the garage. And the investigators corrected him and said, no, Brendan, it couldn't have been on the side of the garage. It had to be in the garage. And then Brendan Dassey agreed. And then Brendan Dassey said, oh, no, we shot her in the RAV4. No, Brendan, you couldn't have shot her in the RAV4. So you've got this ridiculous story that's evolving in two different cases. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've never, ever seen or heard anything like this in my life, right? Now, imagine how those jury members must be feeling now after Making a Murder 1 and 2 has been aired. When you see all the shenanigans that took place between Kratz, Kaczynski, and O'Kelly. Honestly, you've got to be angry. You've got to be upset. This is completely mind-blowing. Guys, do we have any comments about that?
Just that I agree.
Yes, it's completely ridiculous. It really, really is. So, guys, here is another example of Mr. Kratz taunting people like us and people in chat that we are armchair experts trained at the Netflix School of Law, which means what he's basically saying is that none of us should be discussing this case because we don't have the expertise. None of us should be having a YouTube channel, and none of us, no one, should be in chat listening to foul play or anybody else because we are armchair experts, we don't have a law degree, and we are not permitted to make comments, checking convictions.
Well, that's one view out of a million. And I think he just got pointed out of that. You lose on the percentages there because if he thinks that what he did and people reacting to what he did is wrong, he really is so delusional. I mean, I just don't understand how he can think that. That he thinks it is so right what he did and that we are all so wrong. But as we've known through our researches, we've seen a lot more wrongs than he even showed. And where is Mr. Prize these days? I mean, he certainly has taken a hiatus there. He's gone.
He's probably in Arizona somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've got no idea. But this is the fundamental problem, guys. And Ken Kratz has explained it perfectly. He's basically saying that you and I, our channel, YouTubers, critics should not exist. That all this should be discussed in a court of law, and the outcome is the outcome. And we have got no right to discuss this case or any other case. And he's dreadfully worried and concerned about social media. Now, believe me, social media does have its evil aspects, but also has its positive aspects as well. Think about it. Foul Play and other YouTube channels, we're a group of people from all over the world who come together to discuss a variety of cases. But when we present information, we present and discuss the original documents. We don't make things up. We present the hardcore information and we dispute it, right? We criticize it, right? And that's why it's very important. Now, here's the point. If Mr. Kratz is so convinced of Stephen and Brendan's guilt, then for God's sake, release all the evidence to Kathleen Zellner and get it retested. Guys, do you agree? Yes or no? Do you guys agree? Am I being unreasonable? What do you think, guys?
I agree. I agree.
Yep. Neverly?
Yeah, I agree. As you said, if there's nothing to hide, go ahead and provide what's asked for. But that will never happen, right? They're doing everything in their power and then some, breaking laws, inventing laws, etc., in order to avoid what's actually legally acceptable for
Correct.
a defense attorney to ask for evidence
Correct.
in order to help her client.
Correct. And when that evidence and when that information, when documents are being withheld, that automatically gives suspicion, right? You don't have to be from the school of Netflix of law. One can see it from normal human behavior. If you hide material, if you if you don't want to discuss material, it means that potentially you are hiding something. Why are you doing that? Right? Why are you doing that? Susan, do you have a comment?
Or if you nitpick on procedure or fall back on procedural bar. It's just an excuse.
That's correct. And so what we see here consistently is that the state of Wisconsin are using legal means to stonewall Kathleen Zellner, right? So you have think about it in the past. When Stephen Avery was in prison the very first time, many of his appeals were not even looked at. They were not even looked at. They were rejected outright. So, and that's precisely what is occurring this time round. And so, in order to get an evidentiary hearing, it's taking forever, right? You think of all the time and resources that have been spent writing all these negative responses and reviews. Why not just simply test the forensic evidence? And I have a feeling, guys, that a lot of that forensic evidence is gone. Checking convictions.
Yeah, he says that none of us have a right to be out here talking about this. Well, honestly, I think we're a little bit more qualified than him because we're speaking and seeking truth, and we're only going by what he did. And if you're a person who's seeking truth, the criticism that you get from the public should be looked at as creative criticism. Maybe you can do better. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That, I mean, I don't understand. I mean, I really think we're more qualified than him. I mean, that's my opinion.
Well, the important thing is that we've got access to the court trial documents, and we've got access to many DCI reports, and through FOIA, we're getting access to more and more information. So hence, because there are so many people looking at this, the information is being disseminated into society, and people are looking at it with a judgment, with a judgeful eye. They're going over the material. Just Rhonda, do you have a comment?
Yes, I don't know if this was already mentioned, but Ken Kratz doesn't want us doing what we're doing, digging through reports and doing YouTubes and having these discussions. He doesn't want us doing it because he's afraid that we're going to find the truth and we're going to be, well, we already knew, but now we have the proof, and that scares him, I'm sure, because we're outing him basically for the liar and the pervert and the pig that he is. And I think that's a fear for any narcissist when they really feel like they can be outed and proven to be whatever it
Correct.
is.
That's a
That's
very
very
good.
scary. That's a threat. That's threatening to a narcissist.
That's a very, very good point. That's correct. Ken Kratz stated quite clearly, he wants us to disappear. He wants all these groups to disappear and leave things as they are. And yet, when you think about it, it's through the research effort of many, many fine YouTubers who've been in this game for a lot longer than what we have that have come up with all these incredible pieces of information, right? That have led people down all these different paths to consider things, right? And on a personal level, I remember when I saw Making a Murderer for the very first time, both season 1 and season 2, in discussing the forensic evidence and the DNA evidence, I could not believe the shit that was coming out of Culhane's mouth. I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, this has got to be a joke. And then when you hear Norm Garn, the way Norm Neverly will tell you, I'm sure, and the others, the way Norm Garn was saying, don't worry about deviating. The jury will understand that you need to deviate to make things so they make sense. And you're thinking to yourself, if you destroy or break the fundamental laws of science, the fundamental principles of science, then you have nothing. Then you're going to put people in prison with false forensic evidence. And that's what got me really rolled up. Just the amateurish behavior of some of the attorneys. And I could not believe Cherie Culhane. To this day, it just blows my mind the amount of errors that she's made. Now, think about it, guys. How many cases has Cherie Culhane actually worked on that potentially could be very susceptible, very suspect? It's very, very scary. All right, guys, checking convictions.
Yeah, I just want to say a credit to you that you know this DNA stuff and you know all about the science of it. So to me, it is very serious that Sherry Culhane was in charge of that. I mean, she has people's lives in their hands, identifying people even, you know. So when that's questionable, you need an expert in there. You need somebody who's dedicated at doing their job right, and that's it, not worried about the outside part of it, just doing your job. And she is not qualified. And I cannot believe that more of her stuff has not been questioned at all. You know, her and Eisenberg. Let's get real. I mean, they're, you know.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. The two witnesses that had great devastating effects on both Stephen and indirectly on Brendan were Cherie Culhane and Dr. Leslie Eisenberg. Right? Don't get me started on those two. Whatever you do, Susan.
Something that I learned during this case that is just absolutely shocking to me is that crime lab analysts actually get a bonus if the stuff they analyze leads to a conviction.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. Yes, I remember hearing that. They get a bonus or some type of payment. But to me, Susan, the most disturbing thing was the mere fact that investigators and prosecutors can directly interact with the lab techs, right? With the lab
as well. Yes,
right?
It's like they work for them.
Correct. And if you're a state forensic laboratory, then you're working for the state, right? And it's the state that was prosecuting Stephen and Brendan. And when you have people like Fassbender telling a senior laboratory technician, Cherie Culhane, tried to put her in his house or garage, to me, that's all bets are off. All
Talk
bets
about
are off.
A conflict of interest.
Massive conflict of interest. 100% agree. Massive. Checking convictions. Thank you, Susan. Checking convictions. Do you have a comment?
That's why I don't understand why blind testing or double blind testing, where it's not, they don't know where it goes or who's testing it or who the specimen is. I don't understand why they wouldn't want that to make their job, less stressful, actually, if they don't feel the stress from prosecutors or, you know, detectives. But straight for the truth, that they wouldn't be questioned, and their job should mean that much to them that you think they would really want that. That just blows my mind that they don't just automatically have that blind and double blind testing.
That's correct. And we all know why they don't want to do that, right? I don't have to spell it out. And also the mere fact that Cherie Culhane had a very long history with Stephen Avery, dating back to 1985. And it was her rubbish hair evidence against Stephen Avery that went a long way to get him convicted, right? And we all know that hair evidence is like bite mark analysis. It's very, very dodgy science. So when you think about it, because she had such an incredibly long history with Stephen Avery, why did she involve herself in the case? In actual fact, Cherie Culhane volunteered herself to be the lead forensic scientist, not her supervisor, but herself. She nominated herself. Susan,
did she not do all of the testing in this case?
Yeah, but not only did she do all the testing, she also did the swabbing, right?
Exactly.
So
yeah.
That means I collect swabs, I do the testing, I know the results, I can do anything I want.
So suspicious. Right? Yeah.
That's highly, highly suspicious. And as checking convictions rightly said, if you had done double-blind testing, that is, the person who did the swabbing uses a code. The person doing the testing has got no idea what the code is, what the samples are, which means that when you get the results at the end, you have no idea what belongs to what. Once all the results are obtained, you get the key out and you say, all right, sample A comes from the RAV. Sample C comes from the number plate. Sample D comes from here, comes from there. that means you've got no prior knowledge where the samples came from. So double-blind testing means that you remove any hint of suspicion from yourself, which means that you haven't collected the samples, you haven't done the swabbing, you haven't done the forensic testing, and you haven't got all the results in your hands. Checking convictions.
Yeah, that just really makes me think that even in the very beginning where they're collecting evidence, they had a plan because they were going to use Sherry, who let him out, put him back in. That, that's just a big, like, hello, that's why she was there. That's why she volunteered. She was like,
correct.
okay, I messed up. Now, well, in their eyes, I messed up. But actually, she did the right thing in the first case. And so let's just really get this in the bag. Let's just tie this up in a nice bow and make sure that we get a conviction.
Correct. Now, I'm very sensitive. I'm very sensitive of the time, so I want to ask Zoe. Zoe, do we have time for one more question, or do we wrap it up here?
Depends on how long the question is going to be.
I reckon what we'll do, we'll wrap it.
One more.
One more?
Okay,
Yeah.
one more.
Okay. One more. All right. I quote, "A man from California wrote to suggest history would recount my story alongside that of a fellow named Adolf Hitler. I was compared to Ted Bundy, Hannibal Lecter, and the Grinch who stole Christmas in an internet, quote, worst villains in history, real or fictional, unquote. Play off bracket. Worst villain in history for doing my job, for convincing 12 citizens from Manitowoc that the evidence was overwhelming, pointed to one obvious suspect, and argued that this man should be held accountable for the death of the 25-year-old photographer whose body was found almost literally at his doorstep." All right, so guys, the final question is this to the panel. What do you believe Mr. Kratz will say to the Avery, Dassey, and Horbach families when both Stephen and Brendan eventually get exonerated? Now, the reason for asking that question, it's a tough question, is because he is absolutely sure of their guilt. And yet, look how people have been so critical, hypercritical of Mr. Kratz. So the question is this: what do you believe Mr. Kratz will say to the Avery, Dassey, and Horbach families when both Stephen and Brendan eventually get exonerated? Who would like to? Susan.
He will never, ever, ever admit they are innocent. He will stick by his story.
I unfortunately agree with you 100%. 100%. I don't think he's ever going to say anything to anyone except probably the Horbach family to say, I'm sorry, they got it wrong. That's all. I reckon that's exactly what he'll say. Any other comments, guys? Neverly, what do you think he'll say?
I agree with you and Susan. I don't think he would ever admit that he himself, Kratz, was wrong, first of all, that he would just blame the stars and the moon for, a conspiracy, and that Stephen had cheated in order to get out. And to Stephen, I think that he would say, you're still guilty no matter,
Correct.
You're not the star. And he would tell him all these horrible things. You know why? Because of the projection. And you know why? Because Kratz is a narcissist. And once a narcissist, always a narcissist, unless in few cases with the intense therapy, when you're honest with yourself and you really, really strive to get out of that and break the cycle, but Kratz is not doing that, right? We can see that
Correct.
by his actions. So
Correct.
Kratz will always, and any other narcissist, will be calling you things that you are not, but that they are. So all the
Correct.
vile things that Kratz may say to Stephen into his face, or he's been writing about Stephen in his stupid book, it's all a projection. The loathing that they have for themselves is just unbelievable. It's sick. But because they hate themselves and they cannot say, yes, you are this way, that's why they get into drugs and cheating and thrills and whatever, because they cannot sit by themselves to
which is exactly what happened to Mr. Kratz.
Exactly. So they find a victim, in this case is Stephen and Brendan, and they project onto them all the vile things that they think and know they are. It's unbelievable.
Yep, a very, very good response. Thank you very much, Neville. 100% agree. Checking convictions.
Yeah, I just like to point out that we've only been doing this for like 6 years. He's been doing his bragging and inserting himself in the public and trying to keep his narrative strong for 16 years, or almost 16.
Correct. Yeah, it's just completely unbelievable. But the amazing thing is that no one wants to say that they've been wrong. No one wants to admit that they have made a mistake. And here's the problem. Did Stephen Avery ever get an apology from Kaseric, Vogel, or the MTSO about his wrongful conviction in 2003? Did anyone ever apologize to him?
Penny
No.
did.
Yeah.
Penny did.
Yeah.
Penny did. But did Vogel, Kaseric, or anyone from the MTSO say sorry?
They don't
No, they
even
convicted
believe.
him of a murder.
They said it wasn't their fault.
Yeah.
Correct. In actual fact, there are those like Peterson, Couchet, and I'm sure others who still believe that Stephen Avery sexually assaulted Penny Bernstein. Right? That's what completely blew my mind when I remember in the trial when Strang and Buting were questioning various officers. Well, you know that Stephen has been exonerated. He was nowhere near the beach. And they said, they still made the comments, well, how do we know? What did Jean Couchet say? Where did the evidence come from? I don't know. So imagine if Brendan and Stephen one day are exonerated, that they didn't commit this horrible atrocity on Teresa Horbach. I'm quite sure that no one is going to apologize to them. Guys, do you agree with that? They're never going to get an apology.
Never.
Yeah. And that is, just so sad. I mean, I know it's a bit of a game. You got to chase the win, chase the conviction, chalk up the victory. But when it goes wrong, it goes horribly wrong. And there are victims everywhere. If you've been wrongfully accused, how are you going to get that time back? You've destroyed their lives have been just about destroyed. Checking convictions.
Yeah, I don't see why they couldn't admit, hey, you know what? The system got it wrong, or we got it wrong. Let's improve on this. I mean, if you're really seeking the truth, all these things, an apology, an admitted of being wrong, looking at an evidentiary hearing, all those things should be top shelf. You should want all of that.
100% agree. And, the problem is, guys, we know that the prosecutors have got prosecutional immunity. So once you've got that immunity, you think that you're bulletproof, and that's the massive problem. All right, guys. Well, look, we've gone for an hour and a half, and Zoe's giving me death stares through the internet. And so, look, guys.
Not.
Yeah, I'm only joking. So, guys, Zoe, we got another 2 or 3 minutes to wrap up?
Of course, we need to wrap up. I can't just push the button.
Beautiful. So look, guys.
Wait a minute. Since when?
Correct. So, guys, I'd like to thank everyone, and thank you so much for coming back and listening to our podcast. It's so much appreciated, and everyone on the panel really enjoys your company and your fantastic comments and questions. Please, guys, if you haven't done so, subscribe to our channel and leave your DNA on the thumbs up button if you enjoyed the podcast. And so what I like to do is to quickly go through the panel, tell us how you are going and what you have been up to. Checking convictions.
Oh, just getting ready for Christmas, putting up lights. Thankfully, there's no snow yet. I would like it to come on Christmas and leave after Christmas Day.
No.
But other than that, no, kind of got some ideas going on in my head. Just still fighting for Brendan and doing Brendan talks and enjoying foul play and my teammates. And that's about it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Checking Convictions. Susan.
Yeah, Dr. Silkman, I just want to say thanks for doing the podcast today. I kind of had the withdrawals from last week.
Oh, no.
But I'm not addicted, I swear.
Thank God you're not addicted.
But thank you.
Sure.
It was a great
pleasure.
podcast today.
Pleasure. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Just Rhonda.
Same old. Just digging and reading and looking for evidence. So, proof.
Fantastic. Yes, I saw one of your presentations, your lives, and I tell you what, that was a really good one. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like I said,
I really appreciated you popping in and helping us
oh
out.
no, not at all. Just like I said, yourself, Checking Convictions, and others with your own YouTube channels, your own YouTube projects. It's fantastic, the work that you're doing and the education that you're giving to all of us and keeping the cases alive, which is fantastic.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
No, thank you, just Rhonda. And Neverly, thank you. And Neverly.
Hello there. I've been actually kind of mellow on Discord lately.
What?
Because maybe in my own head. I know.
You mean you're no longer addicted?
I've never been addicted. I am perfectly healthy mentally and emotionally. But I gotta tell you something, Dr. Silkman.
Yes.
I watched your presentation on Jerome on JFK, and what a tease that was, because guess what?
What's that?
I've been just binging and reading and watching and listening all about JFK as a refresher. Oh my goodness. That was the first case for me, actually, that kind of piqued my interest. I'm like, something's wrong over here. And then, but I was too young for something like that. Because, of course, I wasn't even born when he was shot. Because I'm so young. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much, Neverly. Yes, if you haven't caught it, I did a podcast with Jerome, basically talking about the JFK assassination. I worked in the JFK assassination case. I started in 1985, believe it or not, and it was a really enjoyable discussion with Jerome. I promised I would never talk about JFK again. And out of the blue, Jerome just asked me, because it was a 58th year anniversary since the passing of Kennedy. And also not forget Lee Harvey Oswald and Officer Tippit was murdered as well. It was pretty freaky stuff. And I'm really glad I got, just to have a bit of a discussion. And unfortunately, a bit like Neverly, I've spent a couple of days, about a week or so, reading about 2 or 3 books and seeing a couple of documentaries on JFK, and thank God I'm not addicted. That's all. Anything else, Neville?
Well, I want once again to thank you. And if you haven't checked that out, it was only like a week or two ago on Jerome's. And
Yes.
yeah, Dr. Silkman, we have a lot to talk about.
Oh boy. Yeah. Yeah. If for those who haven't been into the JFK assassination, the Brendan Dassey Stephen Avery case is complex. The JFK assassination multiplied by 100. It's a rabbit holes absolutely everywhere. Unbelievable. All right. Thank you so much, Neville. Much appreciated. Zoe, what about yourself?
Oh, no, nothing. Same old, same old. Nothing new.
You haven't got the finger on the button, have you?
No, I'm sitting 3 meters away from the button, I promise.
Good, good. Well, look, guys, again, thank you so much. I'd like to thank the panel for coming along, and please check out the excellent work that Sunshine Christina is doing on her podcast. And of course, we all pray for the speedy return of both Alice and also J-Jax. And hopefully that J-Jax will continue his excellent podcast series on Open Mic, and also Sunshine Christina with all her work that she's been doing on the foyers, and of course discussing Gregory Allen and the sex rape kits. That whole thing is just a horrible, horrible situation. Again, guys, thank you so much, and we will all catch you next week. Thank you, guys.
This has been a Foul Play production.